I am so excited to dive into yet another Rebel Radio conversation with a new friend, Emma Goldie. Emma, thank you for being on the show. I'm so grateful that you're here today.
Hey, Cindy, I'm so excited to be here. It's gonna be great getting to know you.
Yes, absolutely. As we were saying before we went live, I get to know people live. I know nothing about Emma other than what I've seen on her social media feed. So I love doing these conversations just to get to know people in front of a live audience. It's great. So, Emma, before we went live, I shared a little bit of your numerology with you. And I'm
hmm
curious, what was kind of your biggest aha or takeaway from what I shared?
It's funny because I did a really long post and an email last night around privilege and a story when I was like 8, my mom told me I couldn't date a guy. I mean, whatever you do when you're 8, because he was a gypsy and lived in a caravan, and
Mm,
we were upper middle class. And I realized that limitation that she wanted to put on me had an effect in for me in terms that I became a rebel, I think, and I
hmm
always sought that freedom away
mm,
from the norm, away from societal conditions, away from familial conditions. And obviously, what you shared with me is the number 5 is about freedom.
yeah.
And I've always been like doing service work,
hmm
and people have always been able to come and talk to me, and I guess that's kind of what I'm still doing. So
Right.
like I said, I'm in the right place. I
Yeah.
got the right body, and I managed to deal with the other stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, I
um
love that. I love that.
mm,
So
mm.
good. So tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, who you are here to serve.
I work with leaders and entrepreneurs, and I help them when they've come to a point where they've got all the stuff, they've, come to their goals, they've probably likely got a lot of different responsibilities, and they all of a sudden wake up and kind of like, hang on, is this it? Because
Mm,
what will have happened is their identity selves have created all these things around them to make them feel safe, and all of a sudden their soul self is calling and calling, and it's getting louder and louder, and they want to blame their partner or their job or themselves, and actually all it is they haven't been listening to the inner self or the soul self. So I help
mm-hmm,
people to reconnect with their soul through a methodology I developed called polarity navigation, which is amazing. I'm an old yogi, really,
hmm
and I started meditating when I was 13. So
Wow.
I'm really into helping people align with themselves. But the
hmm
way I've done it, because I'm also a driven entrepreneur, is by looking at all the mistakes that I made in terms of wanting to strive. Like you were talking again about in my number 5, wanting to strive and taking on too much and being, yeah, I'm
hmm
nearly there, and constantly pushing myself.
hmm
So what I find is that other entrepreneurs, they get themselves in health problems or relationship problems, and actually all it is they just haven't got the right orientation to the right place within themselves. So
Right.
it's turning back to the soul self, learning how to fine tune and listen and get in touch with their masculine and feminine side, and different like nice yogic breaths. And also I do a meridian, kind of a non-invasive meridian therapy, which
hmm
is a little bit like tapping, but for me it's kind of next level. So you're
hmm
using breath work points, and you go back to the original imprints, release them, replace them with a positive affirmation, and then look at how to navigate life through different 9 spectrums of life, your life.
mm
And all of this is done with biofeedback, so we can really hone in and, how should I say, specify like in a really detailed way which parts of their life, or the way that people are using time or space or self-care, or not using those things, and those places are being ill at ease and creating whatever disease in their life that there is.
I love that so much. And it's
Mm,
such powerful work because I know for myself as an entrepreneur, I got into that space too, where I had
oh,
created this physical reality and I was miserable. And I was like,
mm-hmm,
why am I so upset about my life? My life's
mm-hmm,
good. But it
mm,
wasn't because my soul was so unhappy. And so
mm.
definitely spent the last few years sorting that out. And yeah, we
Yeah,
get to that like
yeah.
that dark night of the soul, right?
Exactly, and that's what I mean. My offer is really Dark Night of the Soul or existential crisis, and that's what it
hmm
is. There's a crisis with our existence because we're so misaligned. There's a big
Yeah.
chasm in terms of what our inner or higher or soul self wants, and
hmm
the reality we've created outside, which we've worked so hard for, and it's just like, oh my god. And
Yeah.
then there's also the piece which you probably realized when you have to kind of backtrack on all the unsaid contracts with people and all the
Yeah.
arrangements you've made, and you're just
Yeah.
like, whoa, how not only have you got to navigate or come to a point of understanding yourself that that's what's happened, because that reminder, or that, screaming, or that chasm is just a reminder of the self. But
Hmm.
then when you've kind of built up, how do I say, interdependencies with people, or even in partnerships, suddenly if you're like, suddenly, oh, I don't feel like doing that anymore, of course there's ways that you can do that, and hopefully, your partner, and your people want to move with you. but
Hmm.
but if your everything you've built has been, on a kind of falsity or an identity piece which you didn't realize was false, it's like, where does that leave you? The ground is, whew,
Yeah, sometimes you got to let go of a lot of
whoa.
shit.
Basically, yeah.
Which leads me into my next question about self mastery, because I think that's really the key to understanding who you are and how you show up and what you really want to do in this world. Um,
Mm.
what do you define self mastery as?
The thing is, if we try anything enough, then we become masters of it. And normally our attention is not focused inside. So, you know, and
Yeah.
even in every day with technology, how easy is it to pick up the phone? Even this morning, I like tipped my guitar to bed and I was going to play guitar, and there's me like scrolling through Facebook. Oh, I just answer them. And immediately yourself is gone. You're kind of
Yeah.
outside. So a
Hmm.
lot of it is about coming inside and realizing what makes you drive, what makes you get into super flow, what makes you chill out, what are the underlying pressures that you put yourself under, and what are the underlying, in a way, addictions that you have,
Hmm.
to make yourself feel good or override those identity pieces, to keep everything as secure as possible in this parameter of like ego self that you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I love that way the mastery is doing things over and over and over again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I love that. Just constantly remembering to bring it back to self all the time and you become masterful at it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that.
And there's so many ways of coming back to self. Obviously, I love meditation, and a lot of people don't know how to meditate, or don't have think they don't have the time. But there is tools and techniques that you can use to get into that zone really quickly. And sometimes that's, focusing in on a really like, detailed task, or chilling out with some music, or having a dance, or having a long bath. And it's most people will have a rhythm to their own time frame. So like my concentration is 50 minutes, so generally I'm planning things in 50-minute slots, and
Hmm.
that means I'm not going outside of that stretch for what's comfortable for me. And therefore I don't end up questioning myself or getting distracted. And it's really for us to study, what are our own natural rhythms, what environment and space around us,
Hmm.
is going to work for us to be in the ultimate. A bit like what conditions helps, the plant to grow once you've planted the seed.
All right.
We're kind of living, breathing organisms, and society is so detached from what humans need.
Yeah, very
It's
much so.
crazy. So
Very much
it's
so.
it's really that self-care, self-love,
Hmm.
self-nurturing, and us giving ourselves permission to do that is massive. It's a really
Yeah,
big piece.
permission, I think, is the biggest piece because we're so pulled outside of ourselves all the time by all the distractions in the world and the shoulds and the obligations and it's and society has taught us it's selfish to think about ourselves and put ourselves first. But I think that's really the key is that we have to put ourselves first,
And
selfish or
it's
not.
and like you said, self-mastery. How can we master ourselves if we're always looking outside? And generally, what shows up on the outside is the reflection of what we haven't dealt with inside anyway. It's like, how
Yeah.
many times you need to be reminded, you know what I mean?
Right? Oh, I don't like that. What did I create?
Yeah, or God, why do these annoying people keep showing up, you know?
Right.
It's
Yeah,
like,
it's not them.
have a
Um,
look.
so how has this idea of self-mastery supported you as an entrepreneur?
Um, I think it's interesting because my journey was always split between my spiritual self and trying to fit into the world. And
Mm,
actually, what I've created in this methodology is a way to bridge the two within the work. And that was partly through not doing it through my own entrepreneurial journey early on.
mhm.
Again, I was looking outside, I was going on loads of courses, trying different people, trying all the things. And I guess that confidence in self, which again is knowing the self, but also having, the right mentor or the
Mhm.
right guidance, and there's so many pieces. I think the most important is having the right rhythm for you
Mhm.
and having the right tools. But because there's so much out there, that's a whole minefield in itself.
Go on a journey of self-discovery. What works, what doesn't, right? And just be
Well, yeah.
curious.
And also like entrepreneurship is something which, these pioneering people are doing. And actually part of me feels that actually what they're trying to do is learning about themselves. I think
Mhm.
it's like a self-discovery journey, and it's
Like,
just been so thrown outside. And if we turn even 20-50% of that inside, wow, it's like the perfect fusion.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, entrepreneurship is well, probably the fastest way to figure out who you are.
For sure. Hopefully with not too many crashes and burns in the meantime.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So here at Rebel Radio, we love to have the conversation around wealth as well. And I know that wealth is a word that can be very triggering for some, it can be misunderstood. And I'm curious what you feel wealth is.
Well, as I mentioned about this post I was writing around privilege, it's I suppose my association with wealth has always been with the privilege early on, which I part of me wanted to turn away from because there were parts of that society that I was in that I felt were inhumane and wrong. And I'm not talking about slavery or anything like that. I'm talking about the modern life, although some of those imprints will also be in the cultures, to be honest.
Hmm.
But the fact that I couldn't receive a heart necklace from a 8-year-old boy who lived in a caravan, you know what I mean? My
Yeah.
mom was really liberal, and that just like blew my mind. And
Hmm.
it's only in the past, actually, even in the past weeks, that I've added all the things I did together in my life and really pinpointed that as part of one of the key decision makers. I went to India. I had a lot of inheritance which I shared and gave away. I've spent a lot of time and effort in humanitarian work with homeless people in the UK. Run a charity there for 10 years after founding it. And I
Mm.
spent a lot of time, with old yogis and living in caves and monasteries and all that type of thing.
Oh, wow.
So part of me like pushed that away,
Mm-hmm.
and I it did link to that initial imprint that I had actually.
Right.
So I, even though I was trying to reject the privilege, I was actually rejecting the privilege, not just the privileged, mentality of my family and what that meant as an upper middle class person. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but I mean, wealth is, wow, that's such a big subject. For me, it combines health, it combines mindset, it combines the ability to love yourself.
Hmm.
Because, abundance is about what you can welcome in on all levels. And that means, for me, embodiment pieces, which mean that the any areas of discomfort or disease within the body, blocked
Hmm.
energy or contraction, is cleared, through breath work. It means being in integrity with what you do with your money,
Yeah.
and having some level of giving back,
Hmm.
because I feel that we are an ecosystem,
Yeah.
and as most of the countries that have the biggest wealth gap have the biggest suicide rates, divorce rates, mental health problems, and all of the stuff.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it's, for me, it comes with the responsibility of ownership of humanity,
Yeah.
and I don't doubt that there's a lot of people with a lot of money who are doing really good things. There's also a lot of
Hmm.
people with a lot of money who aren't. And I think, and where does it not become political? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I see wealth as a holistic perspective as well. And I feel that wealth is the ability to give and receive from life.
Mm,
And we're all connected. We're all one. We're all made of the same stardust. And so if we're not giving to humanity in some way, but also permission to receive from life as
yeah, big
well, I
time,
feel
big
like
time.
that it's the circuit of wealth. It needs to move. Yeah. It needs to flow.
Yeah, for sure. That receiving part is massive, and a lot of the work I do with my clients is around that.
Yeah, yeah. And,
For
the
sure.
redistribution of wealth on the planet, the more healers and coaches and change makers that have the money in their hands who are heart centered and want to give to life, the better. So,
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely a wealth advocate, and as I'm, moving up and accepting more and supporting my clients also doing the same,
yeah,
I feel happy to accept my privilege, knowing the responsibility that comes with that. You know what I mean?
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is one truth that you wish every entrepreneur knew? I know it's so hard to just do one, isn't it?
I think to be in touch with the soul self
Yeah,
or higher self or spiritual self. I mean, it can be defined in different ways,
yeah.
but it's like the part of you that really speaks. That
That
you have.
speaks your truth.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It is
yeah.
your truth, and that's you've got to be able to learn to be still and listen, and that's one of the hardest things in life for anyone. So, it's an easy truth to talk about, but the fulfillment of that is, I guess, probably a life's journey once you get into it.
Right? Simple, not easy.
Yeah, there you go.
I love that. So, if you could share anything with our audience about, what's going on in the world right now and how to navigate that, what would you share?
It's got to be the same message to just come back to the self.
Yeah.
It's there are many things that I've always been sad about, and for me this time is just a heightened reflection of what's been wrong with humanity probably since we became humans. And
Mm,
the only reason why that's accelerated is there's more technology, there's more money, there's more ways of creating arms, man's inhumanity to man is not reflecting in the amount of technological growth that we have. It's
mhm.
like if we were evolving as we should be and as we should have been, then I don't believe that we'd be in such a mess.
Mm,
So I have to bring it back to kind of evolution of the self and us taking responsibility for our piece. And
yeah.
the more that we can spread that and get the vibes higher and do our bit, the more conscious, the more people can become, and then it becomes by osmosis, a more permanent thing, and yeah, the distribution of that energy and frequency goes wider.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. And I think what we're seeing or on the planet right now is an entropy of the old ways of being. It's the end of the old world. And so we're seeing it in a heightened level because it's crumbling. And it's like when a volcano is just sitting there, it's just sitting there and we don't notice it. But when it erupts, we're aware of it, right? And I feel like that's what's happening right now. And our job is to focus on what we want to create within the destruction of that. It's like the tower in tarot, everything's crumbling down so that we can rebuild. So what are we choosing to rebuild? I think that's really
Y-
important.
yeah, I'm a big transformation junkie, and
Me too.
um, for me, any opportunity for change is a good opportunity, and of course, notwithstanding, the sadness and the
Mhm.
loss that a lot of people have experienced,
Yeah.
within this period of time. But that's been going on forever and is still going on in parts of the world where it shouldn't be happening. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, I feel very sad, and yet I just can't get stuck there. I can't watch the
Yeah.
news.
No, no, don't watch the news. We need to focus on what we want, not what we don't want. And whatever's in
Exactly.
the news, I don't want. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Emma, I want to thank you for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure getting to
Oh,
know you in this short period of time. I feel like I could talk to you for hours.
yeah, for sure.
But as always, we end the show with one last question.
Okay.
What do you dream of for the world?
Um, I dream of a utopia where people are coming back to community,
Yeah.
where we are reconnecting with ourselves through the expression of creativity, through the honoring of the simple things, and all of these beautiful things, which of course there's still creative people in the world, but that community element for me is really, really important. And
Mm.
I think we underestimate how much we need other people. But the way that life is segmented, it's like other people at the moment, bring fear and judgment and questioning of self, because we've
Mhm.
been become so isolated and unable to interact in that way. So I run a lot of festivals, and we run
Mm.
retreats and all of that stuff. So I'm a bit of a community junkie actually as well. So,
I love it. I love it.
but then within that, people still. I've also been to a lot of communities where there's still all the same shit going on. So people have to bring that level of responsibility too. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Emma, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you.